Hi everybody, Professor H again. In this video, we're going to take a look at our writing assignments for Psychology 1. We are planning on doing 2 writing assignments for this semester. They are not what I would call traditional writing assignments. And we're going to go ahead and switch to Canvas and I will start explaining them to you. All right, so in week 2 of our class, I'm going to go ahead and click on week 2 here. In week 2 of our class, you can see in our to-do list that we will be needing to select a peer-reviewed journal article to complete paper 1. The way that we're going to go ahead and do this is to, well, hold on, I got an alarm going off. Sorry about that, guys. It's always something. Okay, I'm not going to redo this. Okay, so there is a link at the bottom of this to-do list that will take us to where you can get that first paper. The first journal article that you're going to select needs to be off of this list that you will see when you click on that link. We're going to go ahead and look at the template for, oh, here's your key terms once again. All right, and we're going to look at our template for the paper. So if I don't want to have to click through every single page on the weekly thing here, I can go over here to modules. I can click on modules. I can go ahead and scroll down to the week 2 module, and I can see, I can find that information in week 2. Oops, if I have the right week, there we go, week 2. So here, I can click on paper 1 and 2, evaluation of a journal article. That way I don't have to scroll through everything and click about 1 million clicks. So this is the document that has the instructions to your paper. So each paper is going to be worth 75 points. And I'm not going to go through verbatim on exactly how to do, I'm not going to read this verbatim. I am going to show you how to do the journal article. All right. So your paper is not traditional. And what I mean by that is instead of writing an APA, American Psychological Association style paper, we are just going to review 2 different research papers in the class. Your paper is going to consist of just answering the questions about the research paper. So here are the questions that you'll be answering. The first one is, what is the title of the article? Why did you choose the paper? The second one is, who are the authors of the paper? Who is or are the authors of the paper? In what journal was this article published? Provide the name of the journal, the title of the article, the year, the month, the volume number, and the page numbers. And this is usually in the top left corner of the hand corner of the document. I'll show you that later. What were the researchers interested in finding out? What was the researchers' hypothesis? In other words, what did they predict they would find? You can usually find this in the last paragraph of the introduction. Next question, in your own words, what methods did they use to answer the research questions? Use the methods section to answer this question. In other words, I don't want you to cut and paste the research methods section onto your new paper. That is not what I'm looking for, and that will get you 0 points on that section. What you need to do is you need to look at that and explain how they did it. Just use your own words to the best of your ability and tell me how they did the project. Next, describe the participants in the study. So every research study is going to have, it's going to be subjects. If it is an animal study, it's going to be participants. If it's a human study, both are fine for me as far as I'm concerned. Either one of those types of research are going to be acceptable in our class. For example, were the participants college students, stroke victims, children with anxiety, hooded rats, mice, soldiers with PTSD? Who were they? So you're going to want to give me as much detail as you can about them. How many were in the study? How many groups they used in the, if they were divided into certain groups? Were they all male? Were they all female? Was it, 72 males and 78 females? That's the type of information you're going to give. They're going to give the age range, any details that you have regarding the participants in the study, you're going to go ahead and give that information there. The next one is pretty subjective, and this is where you're going to synthesize this material and decide for yourself how to answer this. Do you think this research was important? Why or why not? The question is asking your opinion. Please be sure to explain fully. The next question is, what were the main findings of the study? And when you look at one of these research papers, the results section is full of statistics, and that's not really a good place to try to find out what they found, unless you are specifically very familiar with that particular type of research that's being done. So you would see the discussion part of the paper to find that out. If findings were different than were expected, explain what was different, okay? And in your opinion, what was the most interesting part of this paper? So completing this is what is going to be your paper. You're going to need to use complete sentences. This is a college writing assignment, so I don't expect to see one line written on there. Don't give me a one sentence answer on this, or you are going to get a very poor grade. Okay, it's a relatively easy assignment, but it requires some thought and some effort on your part. So this is the paper itself. This is what it's going to look like. So I'm going to try to scroll back to the top of this thing. Up here are the instructions, which, I kind of went over here. I didn't really go over word for word, but I kind of gave you the idea there. And we have this link. Hopefully this link is still good. Let's open this one. And this takes you to the free APA journal article website. Now, for your first paper, I want you to choose one of the papers that is found on this page. For your second paper, you can choose a research article that maybe is something you're more interested in that you find in the library website. So, or for your second paper, you can do another one from here. It's up to you what you want to do on that. A couple of the more important things is I want you to pick out a paper that is actually an experiment, where the researchers did an experiment. And that is really important, because you're not going to be able to tell me the participants, and you're not going to be able to tell me a lot of these things if they didn't do an experiment. There are some cases where you will be able to, but for the most part, I'd like you to do your best to find where somebody did an experiment. So this first paper, this is a very popular one, Moving While Black, Intergroup Attitudes, Influence, and Judgments of Speed. Okay, so if I click on this and I think, well, I might want to do this paper, but I'm not sure. The first thing you want to do is you want to read the abstract. The abstract is this short little summary of the paper right here. So if you look at this one, it says 4 experiments. Oh, so I already know. Okay, there's experiments that they did in this. 4 experiments examined whether intergroup attitudes shape the speed with which Blacks are thought to be moving. When participants rated the speed of Black and white faces that appeared to be moving toward them, greater intergroup anxiety was associated with judging Black targets as moving more slowly relative to white targets. Experiment 2 demonstrated that this effect occurs only for approaching targets. Experiment 3 showed that this slowing bias occurs, at least in part, because of the perceived duration of time each image was moving. Such a slowing bias is consistent with the time expansion and perceptual slowing reported by people who experience threatening events. So this is a really interesting paper. Oftentimes when you first read the abstract, you may not understand exactly what they're talking about. So if it seems like it's interesting to you, but you don't really understand the language, that's normal. Okay, even me, if it's a research project that I'm not, or a research area that I'm not familiar with, I would have to do some reading of the introduction to find out the basis for the study, and they will teach you what you need to know about it. So if I'm interested in this paper, the first thing I'm going to do is read the introduction. The introduction is the first part of the paper. You would go through all of this, and you would read the introduction. The introduction is going to give you the background of the story, why they're doing the study. It's going to tell you about research that's been done in the past and why it's important to do the research that they're doing now. So it's going to give you all that information. Current research, this is telling you exactly what they're planning on doing. Usually the hypothesis, which is the their prediction of what's going to happen in the study, is usually in this paragraph that is right before they move into their research. Okay. Let's see, slight bias. We also compare perception. Okay, so this first part is they're telling us current research, what they're doing. Here's experiment 1, and you'll see there's a method section. This tells you what they did, procedure and measures. You don't have to know all that. You just have to read through it and kind of get an idea. Okay, this is what they did basically. And to the best of your understanding. If you don't understand it fully, don't worry about it too much. Just do the best you can. Results section is full of statistics. So you're not really going to get what they found out of the results section. It's just going to be too complicated and too full of statistics. Even though I've taken a lot of statistics classes, if I'm not familiar, at least to some degree, about what they're doing, I may have a little bit of difficulty with that. So here's the method. Method section has your participants, where it's going to tell you 52 white US residents, 43% female, age, median age, 19.8 years. So that's the kind of information you get. And then you have your results section. So when you go to read this paper, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to look at that abstract and say, yeah, that's interesting. Then you're going to read the introduction. After the introduction, just skip right on down to the discussion, because the general discussion is going to tell you what they found and why they feel that that's important. All right, let's look at another paper. Let's go down here. How about health? There's a lot of different categories here. So let's see. And there's a lot of different studies. So some of them are not necessarily going to be good for this assignment. So when you are reviewing your paper, and if you have questions about whether it's going to be good to use for this assignment, just email me, email the title of the paper that you want to do, and I can take a look at it for you, okay? So if you have any questions, let me know. Like, let's see, post-traumatic growth among combat veterans, a proposed developmental pathway. I haven't read this one yet. Okay, this is a newer one, I think, on here. With a large number of combat veterans returning from war, there is an ever-increasing need to understand ways to help soldiers and veterans successfully navigate their return to life after combat. Post-traumatic growth offers strong protective elements following combat, including reduction in suicidal ideation, because we know those rates are high. The purpose of this study was to explore a proposed psychosocial developmental pathway between post-traumatic stress symptoms and PTG, which is post-traumatic growth. They told us what that was earlier, among combat veterans for the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars. The indirect pathway from post-traumatic symptoms to PTG through negative psychosocial development was found to be significant and positive. It appears that psychosocial development may indeed mediate the processes by which combat veterans can make meaning from their experiences, improving overall well-being. So if this is something that would be interesting to you, first thing you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to, okay, you read the abstract, you're like, is it a study? Is it an experiment? What'd they do? I don't even know. First thing you're gonna do is you're gonna read that introduction. After the introduction, you're going to probably find the hypothesis right here to further investigate, and it's going to tell you exactly what they did. And we know it's a type of experiment because look, it has a methods section. So we have a methods section, and let's see. All right, so we can go through here and different types. There is a lot of different types of research. Some research can give you a cause and effect relationship. True experimental research gives you a cause and effect relationship. This caused that, this caused something else. Correlational research is still very, very important research, and that is research where we're saying there's a relationship between these two factors or variables. A lot of studies that are done with humans especially, you can't just put them in a room, give them PTSD, and then experiment on them with something else. But you can look at these situations and do research saying that different factors are related to one another. Like, you know, having a better support structure is related to reduced risks of suicide. Okay, it's not causal, but it is a relationship there. Okay, but if you see a method section in there, you should have enough to go ahead and review this paper. So it's telling you the participants here. And down lower, it's talking about your measures. These are the things they're measuring, their demographics, education, age, race, marital status, all those kind of things. So this participant section is quite long because they have a lot of different things that they're looking at. They're looking at combat exposure, PTSD, okay. And here's their conceptual model. Okay, so for this, what they're going to do is they're going to explain to you exactly how they're relating all of these things together. So the conceptual model, this tells, like where it says post-traumatic growth, it tells how they're measuring post-traumatic growth. This one might be a little complicated. You could still use this one, but it's a little more complicated. Level of threat, it's telling you what level of perceived threat is. Combat exposure, this is their definition of combat exposure. Psychosocial development, this is going to detail what their definition of that is. In psychology, the word development or the word depression, any of those concepts can mean a lot of different things. So when you are referring to these terms in your research, you need to spell out exactly what you mean. That's called an operational definition. You have to define exactly what you mean by those terms. So that's what they're doing here, and they're telling us how they're measuring all of these things. Okay, so after this is the model they're using. Looks very complicated to me. I would read through it and see if I understood it or didn't understand it. Then I would go ahead and move right on over to the discussion. Okay, so I would read my abstract, I would read my introduction, I would read my discussion, and then go back and look at those other factors. Okay, if you don't feel like you can answer the questions for the paper, then it might not be a good paper for you to use. And I hadn't looked at this one before. So without really getting into detail, it looks like it would be that you could get those factors out of it. It just might be more complicated than some of the other ones. Here's anger intensification with combat related PTSD. That's another one that is, this definitely can be used, but some of the stuff is a little more complicated, but that one's a pretty good paper as well. Feeling older and risk of hospitalization, evidence from 3 longitudinal cohorts. So they looked at 3 different cohorts of people longitudinally over a long period of time. And you would read the abstract. Right here in the abstract, you can see methods, conclusions, results. So most of these will be acceptable to use. Occasionally, you will have something that's a review. If you have something that's just a review of the literature, that's not going to work out well. You're not going to be able to answer the questions by using that. But most of the papers on this website, you will be able to use. So that being said, go through, look at these research papers, the journal articles, I mean. Look at the journal articles and see if there's something that you would like. Let's see. This is an interesting one about the syllabus. Okay, so let's just look at this. Let's take wide survey. Let me find a different one. Oh, health psychology's got some fun stuff in it. Let's see. Okay, let's look at sending your grandparents to university. So if this one looked interesting to you and you could see it's got a method, it's some sort of experiment or some sort of some sort of, maybe not necessarily an experimental research, but it is, they have conducted research in this area. So your paper is going to require you to know what journal this was found in. Well, you found it on this APA website. Uh-oh, where did it come from? If you take a look, I'm going to go ahead and enlarge this a little bit. If you take a look here, you're going to see that this is up in the top corner. It says it is from Neuropsychology. That is the name of the journal, Neuropsychology. The year is 2016, volume 30, number 5, pages 525 through 531. Every one of these peer-reviewed journal articles that you see here is going to have that up in the top corner. Now, you hear me saying peer-reviewed journal article. What is that? The peer-reviewed part is really, really important. Before a paper like this can be published in one of these publications that is, very reputable, professional type of publication, it is peer-reviewed. So what happens is, say I do my study and I write up all my stuff and I send it off to the journal. I want to submit my paper to Neuropsychology, which is a very prestigious journal, and I'm hoping to get published. What happens is several of my peers, people who are familiar with the type of research that I am doing, are going to review that paper that I am sending them. They're going to review my methods, my reasoning. They're going to look at every aspect of my paper. And before it can be published, they are going to have to let me know if I have to change things. And oftentimes, yes, you have to change things. Say I've done an animal study and I've done all this work and I turn it in and they're like, well, one of the reviewers says, actually, it looks pretty good, but there is kind of a hole in your data here. Maybe if you run this other experiment and you do, if you do this other portion and add this to your current research project, then it's going to be up to par for our publication. So at that point, I might go back, run this other part of the study, bring it back, write it all up, send it back in, and then maybe at that point, I will be getting accepted into this journal. But it is a group of peers, people who know their business in the area of research that I am currently doing my research in. So if I was looking at memory and specific types of proteins and what their role is in memory, then there would be experts reviewing my paper that know about memory. They know about the proteins involved in memory. They know about the methods that you use in order to get to that, to get to those types of results. They can look at my methods section and say, actually, this is not very good and we're not going to take your paper because you use these methods and these methods do not give very accurate answers. So that's why being a peer-reviewed journal article is really important. When you read it in a science journal or the LA Times or something like that, usually that's somebody else reading that paper, like a layman, maybe a science reporter, reading that paper and interpreting it however they want to interpret it and then reporting it out. So when you can't use a secondary source like that to really, if you're going to write a paper for college, those secondary sources aren't going to fly. You're going to need to use a journal article like this, a peer-reviewed journal article that doesn't just have a third party's opinions put into it. This is very objective research that's been really scrutinized. Okay, so that's why it's important for you to get to know this. It's important to know where the scientific information is coming from. All right, so enough about peer-reviewed journal articles. It's super important. One other thing I'm going to talk about is replication. When somebody does one of these studies and turns it in for publication like this, that study should be replicable. In other words, somebody else should be able to take my exact methods, use the same type of participants, the same type of whatevers, do it the exact same way, and their findings should be the same as my findings. And then after you have several people that have replicated a study, then we can say, you know what, this is a thing. It really looks like this is the way it really is. One study alone is not going to give you enough evidence to really support things. It takes more than one study. All right, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. All righty, so if you have questions, once again, go to this site, take a look, see what paper looks interesting to you. If you have a question about it, then give me a email. I was just saying give me a call, but just go ahead and email me, and we can even meet via Zoom to go over the paper. Anything you need like that, we can go ahead and do. All right. I think that is, let me see if I have anything else I need to tell you about this. No, I think that's about it. So that is what our two papers are, just actually answering those questions regarding two different research papers. You're going to get another video at a later time that is going to be about using the library resources, so that if you decide that you have something you're interested in and that you would like to find a research paper that is consistent with what you're already very interested in, then you can find that usually at the library. The library has a huge database where you can find that. So I'm going to try to give you guys information on how to look stuff up like that. Okay, if you use a paper that you have come up with on your own using the library database, you will have to provide me a link to that paper, because I need to be able to read that paper so I can grade your paper. Okay. All right. So I think that's about it on this. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me, and we can even meet on Zoom. All right. Take care and have a good evening. Bye.